Hi, welcome to our next edition of Dun& and Bradstreet CFO Club. We are extremely pleased to have with International Asset Reconstruct. Welcome, Daraz.
Thank you very much, Naina, and nice being connected with you again after a long, long time.
What is most interesting about Darais is one professional who was a hardcore finance professional throughout his life, being in the banking sector. Then he took up the chief executive officer role with Abu Dhabi Commercial Bank, and now he's the chief operating officer. Darais, that's quite a journey from finance to business head to operation head. Tell us, something about your journey.
Sure, Naina. When I started my accountancy, probably I thought that if I become the CFO or the CEO, it will be a good end to a career because that's what those days, 25 years ago, when I started my career with PwC. Uh, and the role, the journey from finance to CEO to the COO is probably, I would say, it all to boil it down in one word, it comes to attitude. And right from the start of my career, one thing is I was quite inquisitive. And whenever PwC used to get new clients, they used to prepare something called as a permanent file, wherein basically you go and interview the new client, find out as much as possible about the company and document it. So I used to always volunteer to do that rather than doing a normal audit. So it used to give me a good perspective. And even in finance field, uh, the reason, or probably one of the key reasons why I became the CEO was that I handle the entire gamut of finance, wherein if we are working in big banks, it's country finance or central MIS, market risk, credit risk, operational risk, UK GAAP reporting or IFRS or US GAAP. So I had those stepping stones over a period of 20 years from 95 till 2015 when I got the opportunity. And that also it was completely unexpected. It was just that I joined as head of finance in Abu Dhabi Commercial Bank, and after because there was a churn in the management and the new CEO had come and she was quite tough. A lot of people, senior management guys who were there for a long time, started leaving. So within 2 months of joining, I got settled with or assigned the responsibility for facilities and admin. Another month later, the risk guy resigned, so I was heading the risk part. Some 2 months later, treasury guy resigned, so I was handling the treasury
Right.
part. So at one point in time, I was the CFO, head of admin facilities, risk, and treasury. And then the CEO went on a medical leave, in fact, and she was out for close to 8 9 months, and I ran the bank because since I was handling so many departments, my bosses was assigned me the responsibility that you take interim charge. It was supposed to be for a month or so. Eventually, it became 9 to 12 months. And one fine day, my bosses was asking me whether would you like to be the interim CEO because the incumbent has just resigned on medical grounds. She cannot continue for medical reasons, and we are yet to find a new CEO. So I said, Colin, let me think for a day and I'll come back to you. And he called me on Sunday. They work from Sunday to Thursdays, Friday, Saturdays are off. So, and I was traveling in a car. And then I was thinking in my thought whether I may be capable of handling the job. I should not bit more than I can chew and all those things. And I thought for a day. And next day my phone conked off. And the number was there. I could not reach Colin. I went to, I had a Nokia phone then, so I went to Nokia store. Finally, they revived the phone somehow. And the first phone was calling. He said, it's 24 hours have passed and you haven't reverted to me. I said, yeah, I thought over it. And yes, I'll take up that job. So, and I did that job. Never moved out of my office of finance because I knew this is all temporary because they made me an interim CEO. They were very categorical that they are looking for a permanent CEO. and I was to hold the charge in the interim. And I kept on doing the work. 1.5 years later, they still didn't find anyone, and they also probably took the time to observe me. And then, in after a year and a half of donning the role as an interim CEO, they made me the final
They say that
CEO
the
of the
rest
bank.
was history.
Yes, yes, the same. Yeah. But it's all without planning or without applying for a job. The most important jobs I got in my life was without application. And part of the reason is because in my life, and I think the key differentiator is 80 to 90% of the people generally say that it's not my job, and I am the last one to do that. Sometimes it saddles me with lots of additional work also, but it also gives me an opportunity to learn and kind of move to the next level. Sometimes it gets offered you on a platter, so as luck would have it, you are well prepared for it before you apply for it. So as my dad always used to say, first deserve and then desire.
So, from a finance professional, you said that you've handled risk, you've handled treasury, and obviously, being the big boss of the organization. How has been the difference? You have seen there is a difference in approach at Arise. I mean, any learnings that you want to share with our viewers?
Yes, definitely. See, being in finance, the advantage you have is you have a complete picture of the organization. That also kind of helps you in your move on to the next level, because you know exactly which departments are making money, which departments are losing money, where are the costs centralized, where are the revenue centralized, where are the efficiency ratios, what needs to be done, where is the money coming from, where is the money going to, how many days of reserve buffer we have on our balance sheet, and all those things. But you are still, you need to have a complete eye over details, and you are still managing a department of say maybe 7, 10, 15 people. More often than not, considering that you would have been 20, 15, 20 years or as I was in the job, I was the senior most, and I manage the guys who are, in terms of experience as well as age and maturity, junior to me. So that's a very comparatively a simpler job. But when I became the CEO, there was a 7-member management team, and I was the junior most amongst the management team. And even then, I was selected. And being a 38-year-old, I had to supervise a 55-year-old person. And all the guys were over close to 50 or over 50. Uh, so that's a big, I won't say a challenge, but I would say a big learning experience. And if you do things with respect and care, and people do acknowledge your contribution and your knowledge, then that's partly taken care of. Of course, you have to manage all the egos and everything. Most importantly,
People
you have to
management skills are something that you're saying that it's really
extreme.
important in a big
It's,
role,
it's
right?
yes. Extremely important. People management skills are the most important. Then, when I say people management, it's not just the employees; it's all the stakeholders, whether it's your head office or whether it's your shareholders or whether it's your customers, because everything, the ball is in your hand, and you simply cannot afford to drop the ball,
So,
right? So,
as a finance head, when you were the finance head, that bottom line is very important.
yeah,
For a CEO, top line is very, very, very important, right? So there is a slight mind, because CEO obviously will have, the entire balance sheet is what their focus is, but obviously the growth and the revenue is very, very important for a CEO. For a finance professional, there is a little bit of conservativeness comes in. So how did you merge this two, mindset together when you have moved from,
right.
say, from a finance role to the CEO?
Yeah, so I would say two things. First is the the moment you move from the CFO's desk to the CEO's desk, you have to look at the macro picture. And macro picture more often than the micro picture. A few numbers here and there may not agree. You have to take it in your stride and move on. So first thing my boss told me is that if you want to be a successful CEO, Darius, you go and hire the best CEO in the market, CFO in the market, because it's human tendency. You will keep on doing things which you are done for past 20 years, and if you keep on doing things for the past 20 years, you will from a good or very good CFO, you may become an excellent CFO, but a very poor CEO. So please stop doing anything and everything about finance. That is the first piece of advice I got, and I was really fortunate. And he set my objectives also in a completely different way. Now that we are saying, and the way Abu Dhabi Commercial Bank was also structured, was only 25% of my objectives were financials. 30% was customer service, 15% was people management, 25% was risk, and so on and so forth. So basically 25 of risk and controls. So the entire thing of not just making the money, but saving the reputation, taking care of your customers, and taking care of the employees constitute the other 75%. And if we take care of the three, the fourth one takes care of it automatically. That's the philosophy of ABCD. So if you take care of the regulators, if you take care of your employees, and if you take care of customers, by and large, profit will take care of it itself.
Whereas now you are in an asset reconstruction company, and how what you are seeing the risk, right at this point of time. What kind of heightened risk are you seeing with the pandemic coming in?
I would say the most important risk is the risk of unknown. First and foremost is, of course, the risk of the health of our employees, which is the key thing, because even a few employees, if they contact, for example, COVID or whatever, then you have to follow whatever various procedures, this, that, and all. So basically, it takes a lot of time away from your core job in managing all these things. International IARC being not a very large organization, we are around 30-35 of us. So we have extended work from home policy till now. And we don't allow anybody to come to office unless it's an extremely urgent work. So they have to either take my specific approval in writing or approval from the CEO in writing to visit the office, because we want to make sure that our employees' health and safety are of paramount importance. Secondly, I see because of the job losses and other things, the risk of being outdated is also very high, especially for the guys who are not working or somehow in between the jobs. This, along with, of course, the various risks of black swan events. Now, if we would have seen Shakurji Palanji with 150 lakh crores worth of Tata Sons share are unable to raise 2,000, 3,000 crores of money. And in times of such kind of situation in banks, you always learn, and I learned it very early in my career. Insolvent banks continue trading, illiquid banks die. You need to always, always, and always have liquidity at your command. And even at ADCB, we used to pay premium significant 1-2% just to get committed lines from other banks for significantly large amounts, because in the past, in my earlier organizations, we had faced challenges when liquidity markets freeze. Nobody, irrespective of how good or bad or creditworthy you are, you won't be able to raise funds. So I think along with all of the risk of health and safety of employees, the risk of being outdated, and the liquidity risk, amongst other things, of dynamic changing environment, the way we consume things. My kids are all learning. They have never been to classes or not been to classes or college or school for last 6 months. And the way of doing things have also changed. And our business, being an asset reconstruction business, is to an extent in financial services still, I would say, somehow brick and mortar, because we take over the security and all those things. It's impacted, yes, moratoriums and all impact us. But yes, other industries have completely undergone a change. In fact, I would go one step ahead. Before the pandemic broke out, there was a very real chance of Libra, which is the currency, cryptocurrency, which Facebook kind of came up with in competing with Bitcoin and other. And probably it's just a matter of time. And my sense is the future currency may be a Bitcoin equivalent, but backed by gold or some other precious metal. uh, rather than algorithms. So uh, that is where so things are completely different, and I would say it's like a generational change. Just like after how the light bulb was invented, the world changed and industrialization became, and then the modern technology age came. We are at the cusp of significant change in terms of technological age and banking and all. Forget banking, the money itself will change, is what I see in the next maybe 10, 15, 20 odd years.
True, true, true. There's like, we are in an unprecedented time, everything changing, people are adapting. And that's how, I mean, do you use any specific tools for risk management? How you integrate your data and how do you look at data for risk management?
I would say data for risk management, we have fairly sophisticated tools and everything at our disposal. But the most important thing in risk management comes outside from risk management. So it's how you interpret the data uh, makes a big difference. And I'll give you my our own example. Now we are our shareholding is by banks as well. So there are directors from banks, and we have this. So we buy assets as an asset reconstruction company, which are rejected and discarded by banks,
Correct.
and they are in dire need and desperation to sell, and they want to recover the money. So it's always coming from an opposite end as to what value you see, as to what value the other person sees. And that's exactly what I would say is the classic case of risk management. First of all, most importantly, are you aware of what you're doing and what you see? Most important thing in risk management is, do you understand what you are doing? And if we are absolutely sure as to what we are doing, because we go so much into nitty-gritty, so much into IRR, so much into cash flow, so much into timing, so much into legal languages for some of the deals, our legal costs run into crores before we buy the deal. But each and every word, each and every clause is being evaluated, re-evaluated. So we come from a completely different perspective. But even if we have to go all the way to Supreme Court, we are reasonably confident that we will be able to extract the value from that asset. So
Correct.
knowing what you do, I think takes care of a sizable part of the job. And of course, another key part is we learn from what our competitors, wherever they are or whatever they have made mistakes, so we don't repeat the same. And it's a very simple thing to do. But with all the data and all the fancy stuff, of course, it gives you a trend. But the look and feel, I mean, the feel when you meet in person, whether the portfolio is genuinely, because we also bought some retail portfolio some time ago, back
So the intuition factor is also important, is what you mean, right?
intuition, as well as how you interpret the data, how you see the risk, how you see the trend, and just looking at the numbers won't get you anywhere. Is what and the same polls can be interpreted in diametrically opposite ways by two different parties. Let's take, for example, Farm Bill.
Yes,
It's a
of
classic
course,
case.
of course,
So
of course.
same set of data being quoted in a completely diametrically opposite way. And both have their pluses and minuses, and both have its pros and cons. So
And it's up to you what you take, right? What you
yes,
take
yes,
from it.
yes. It is your conviction and your interpretation, and where you want to go will determine. And it's a classic case of stock market. Stock market is one person buys, the other person sells, and the guy who sells thinks the price is going to go down, and the guy who buys thinks the price is going to go up. And it's the same security. Everything else remaining the same. It's just a perspective.
Digital.
And
And as you joined your new organization when in between the pandemic and the lockdowns and all, how has that experience been? I mean, is there something different that you have done? How have how have you built your relationship with with your peers, with your employers, with your people under you? How are you managing that challenge?
yeah, so I've never been a big fan of taking work home all my life. And part of the reason was I used to prefer to sit late in office, finish off, and go back home with a clear conscience and peace of mind. And part of the reason was I was dealing a lot with numbers. So I need to have the big screen and all the numbers and spreadsheets around me to give me that comfort and take that quick decision. Uh, but what I've seen, though it's a slightly more nitty-gritty role, but even when it's a strategic role, I wasn't sure that first of all, it's like it comes in small doses. Even the lockdown got extended by in tranches of 3 weeks each. But now we have got more or less accustomed to working on Teams, on Zooms, and everything. And what we are realizing is we are saving enormous amounts of time on traveling, but at the same time we are ensuring that we at least have a couple of laptops, backup laptops or computer, and backup internet connection in our house uh, to ensure that the transition, I won't say it's seamless, of course, that when you meet in person when you leave, it's much more faster and easier. But my philosophy is always you make the best of what you are dealt with. And fate is, or I would say nature has dealt with us the card that with COVID we have to work with so much restrictions. So it's like a classic operational research problem of CPM project management. There will be lots of constraints, but even with all the constraints in place, how will you still achieve your objective? So if the focus is very much there on achieving that objective of getting things done, then it has got its pluses and minuses. It saves time, but of course you like the personal touch, the feeling, and but I would say probably the way forward is something what is already in place in Europe is a mix of online and offline kind of physical presence in office for 2 3 days and maybe work from home kind of thing for 2 3 days may become a norm is what I feel over the next few years.
I'll come back to one question on finance again. This is something I want to ask about the profession. So, as a business head, how much importance or how important is for a business head to have the best CFO? You mentioned once that you need to hire the best CFO so that you can do your job. So, how important is to hire the best CFO, and what are the best qualities that a best CFO should bring in that you consider as the best CFO should have?
Uh, I would say I wouldn't restrict it to the CFO, but you need to be
Yeah.
surrounded by great people, and it's the attitude working. And my philosophy has always been attitude, not aptitude, determines the altitude. So the guys with the right bent of mind, I would say qualities, and finance. Of course, you can't mess up or miss out on details. So of course, you need to have an eye for detail. But there is a big difference between an accountant and a CFO. He should be able to partner the CEO and the entire organization. So he needs to don multiple hats of ensuring that there is enough liquidity in the bank, the business guys gets MIS on time, the vendors gets paid on time. So so one is like a good housekeeping person. What is not written, everything belongs. What is not expressly is part of any other department. In my view, it falls within CFO's domain, and he should be willingly and gladly be doing that job. And that's not necessarily, as I would say, restricted to the CFO. But in my mind, I am very clear, and whenever I hire CFOs, because in banks there are so many, I would say, silos. That there are CFOs, there are COOs, and there are CROs, and there are business risks. So whenever I hire CFO, I tell them whatever else no other business head is willing to take over, you will need to take over and do it gladly. Uh, so eye for in detail, agile mind, active, taking the team along, open to suggestions, open to interpretation. And I have seen that there's no sense in being rigid, whether it is interpretation of standards or interpretation of accounting standards or interpretation of tax statutes. Uh, uh, all these factors are very important if you want to be a successful CFO. So you need to be dynamic, business centric, business focused, having an eye for detail, taking your team along, taking your colleagues along, taking the board and the shareholders along, which will help you achieve. And most importantly, the most important thing, be truthful. As I say, bad news first, good news later. In case if something has gone wrong, please own up, escalate, and things more often than not, if you say sorry, 99% of the time it will be accepted, and after 5 days it may be forgotten. But in CFO role, there is no, I would say, at least in my dictionary, there is no room for any hiding or no room for any, I would say, untruthfulness of cooking the books. And I remember my dialogue with my Dutch CFO in Rabobank, and I was heading there. So he said, I would like our internal audit to have a peek into the kitchen of finance. So I said, yes, Hardik is free to, he is most welcome uh, to have a peek into our kitchen, but I can assure you that we don't cook our books.
Your interview in that context, Darius, yes, a CFO who is truthful, who owns up his own mistakes, and who has a clear conscience. I think that's something which we might take, and it's not only for a CFO, but I think it's for anybody in a professional life and anybody in human life. Those are the qualities that I think all of us should have. Thank you so much, Darius. Thanks a lot. I really enjoyed today's interaction.
Same here, Nina. Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you.